Thank you, Larry. Our next speaker is David Rohde, who is an investigative reporter and editor for Thomson Reuters. David Rohde has won the Pulitzer twice, right? While a reporter for the Christian Science Monitor, he won the Prize for International Reporting in 1996 for his coverage of the massacre in Srebrenica. And then the second time, he shared a Pulitzer for the New York Times' coverage of Afghanistan and Pakistan. He was, at that time, co-chief of the New York Times South Asia Bureau, based in Delhi. And as many of you know, while in Afghanistan, David was kidnapped by members of the Taliban in November of 2008. He managed to escape in June 2009. After 7 months in captivity, he's written a book about his experience. David is very involved in a movement to protect freelancers, to provide, and has been really the guiding force behind a set of guidelines for news organizations hiring freelancers overseas. David will, I'm sure, will talk more about that. David Rohde.
Thank you, Mike and Sheila and everyone here tonight. I talked last night at the dinner, I think many of you were there, about the safety principles, but I want to talk about the importance of this name, Pulitzer, and a little bit about my experience, both with the Pulitzer Prizes and the Pulitzer Center. I don't know another name where in a single profession it causes people to strive so hard to achieve excellence, to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable in terms of journalism. Obviously, there's the Academy Awards, which every great actor yearns for, but I can't tell you what it means to journalists, to win one of these prizes, and then the fact that the family and the prizes and then the Pulitzer Center as well has continued to give it such incredible integrity that it means so much to win a Pulitzer Prize, that Jon Sawyer has run the Pulitzer Center so professionally and so carefully as well. I was I'll literally just tell a couple personal stories about my experiences in journalism and winning these prizes, and talk more about the safety effort maybe during the Q&A. But and I'm glad Larry said he was 27 at the time, because I was a young 27-year-old reporter for the Christian Science Monitor covering the war in Bosnia. There had been reports after the fall of this town of Srebrenica of killings. It was a town that was supposed to be protected by the United Nations. It was the United Nations declared safe area. And the difference here is that this is what happens in the town isn't just an atrocity, a distant conflict. It's different in that the UN peacekeepers went in with the backing of the United States and its European allies. They declared Srebrenica, the surrounded town, these Bosnian Muslims, a safe area, and they took away their strongest weaponry. They took away the artillery pieces they had. They took away some mortars and other tanks they had, and they promised that the United Nations would protect the people of the town. It was about 30,000 people. Fast forward 4 years later, the summer of 1995, Bosnian Serb forces attack the town. There is no serious effort to defend it. There's several hundred Dutch peacekeepers wearing blue helmets and driving white painted armored personnel carriers. The town is overrun. And the men that were in the town sort of set out to walk through the woods. It was about a 20, 25-mile walk to reach from Srebrenica after it had fallen to central Bosnia, the safety there of Bosnian government, majority Muslim-controlled central Bosnia. I'll be honest, here I am, the crack young war reporter. Srebrenica falls. I was on vacation in Australia. I got back. I was sort of furious. I couldn't believe I'd missed this big story. There was a young freelance reporter for the Washington Post at that point named Samantha Power. You may know her. She's now the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. She wrote all these front page stories, couldn't save Srebrenica. Her friends like me were on vacation. It led her to go to law school and become a diplomat. I did a series of stories then getting into Bosnian Serb territory. And the first story, I'll be honest, I was let into Bosnian Serb territory. They were very controlling about where we went. And a border guard sort of made a mistake, and instead of sending me off to sort of cover a group of Serb refugees from some fighting that was going on at that time, they said, oh no, you have to drive all the way to the Bosnian Serb capital and get a new press accreditation. And that road actually let me drive right through Srebrenica. And I used that opportunity to sort of hunt for mass graves, was able to find them, and I mentioned this last night, but all good foreign correspondents know you're only as good as the local journalists who work with you. And I was helped that day by a Serb, a medical student, a doctor, who was sort of outraged by these stories. And we spent an hour walking around trying to find these graves, and were able to finally find them with empty ammunition boxes laying near them, and pieces of paper that we later found out were sort of high school diplomas and other basic forms of education from men who had fled Srebrenica. And finally, at the last, this area of fresh digging, we saw a femur, a human femur, sticking out of the ground. I went and then did more stories and found 8 survivors who said that grave wasn't the only one I'd found. There were at least a half dozen more graves. I went back in on a second trip, was captured by the Bosnian Serbs at a mass grave, and then was luckily released after 10 days after my family and the Christian Science Monitor made a huge effort to get me released. And the key thing here is, I want to say editors. It's teams, it's not me. My editor then was Faye Bowers. She was the Eastern Europe editor of the Christian Science Monitor, and Clayton Jones was the foreign editor. They had this 27-year-old kid saying, I think that, I think I saw, this was a femur, I'm sure it was a femur, and we ran the first story. They let me drop all of my daily reporting, and this was one of the great things about the Christian Science Monitor, and look for these survivors. And then I told them at 27, I really think they're telling the truth. They're all talking about this certain soccer field. They're all talking about being held in the school gym and following the same procedure, getting blindfolds put on them, having their hands tied. And the faith they sort of showed in me was amazing. And we were sort of amazed, and this is what I mean about the importance of these institutions, in that it meant so much to the Christian Science Monitor for, to win this award. There's so many news organizations, BuzzFeed, Vice, Mashable, Vox, that are striving to achieve this, and it's such a unique and precious thing in our profession. And those editors were so great to me, and it was amazing. And then, you win this at 27, you're a one-hit wonder. You've peaked. What are you going to do next? Is it a period or a comma? I ended up at the New York Times, spent another, literally 10 years there working as a Metro reporter, eventually was overseas, started covering the war in Afghanistan. And even inside the Times, the great Times with all of its many Pulitzers, there's nothing more important. There's nothing that makes you feel, that you've really achieved the most you can in journalism and made a difference with your stories. And my second experience was part of a team of reporters. It's not quite as elegant a story. We had covered Afghanistan together, particularly myself and an incredible female journalist named Carlotta Gall. And we all really felt that the war in Iraq had distracted attention from Afghanistan and how badly things were going. This was mostly coverage in 2007 and then 2008. But, I'll be honest, it was late 2007. We had this big story that sort of exposed a core problem of the American failure in Afghanistan was that the Pakistani army essentially sheltered and helped the Afghan Taliban. They let them cross into Pakistan and then regroup, plan their raids, and carry out cross-border attacks into Afghanistan and against American forces. And we had to get one story done by December 2007 because it was going to be part of this package for the Pulitzer Prizes. And I remember they actually held that story, and this great story exposing that Pakistani intelligence was actually helping the Taliban, and Carlotta and I were crushed, and we were so mad, and all this stuff like that. We had no idea that, and the story ran sort of in January 2007. Over the course of 2008, a whole team of reporters, Carlotta Gall, Mark Mazzetti, Jane Perlez, Chris Chivers, Eric Schmidt, Dexter Filkins, and Pir Zubair Shah, a Pakistani journalist, ended up putting a package of stories together that showed the Taliban resurgence, that showed that this forgotten war was going wrong, and showed sort of Pakistan's complicity in all of this. I was taken captive in November 2008, as Sheila mentioned. I didn't know that the Times had entered these stories in for a Pulitzer Prize. I was in captivity through June 2009, and the honest story is we escaped from captivity, and I called my wife and talked to her and my family, and I've apologized to them profusely about the captivity and all these other problems. And don't get mad at me, Mike, but in like the second conversation with my wife, June 2009, she says, "Oh, by the way, you won another Pulitzer Prize." And I was thrilled, but I was, more thrilled to just be out and walking around and breathing the air and able to sort of choose when I, could eat and talk to my loved ones and all that kind of stuff. But that for the whole team at the Times, for people who cared about Afghanistan, it was this huge sort of affirmation that that country and the journalism that we did there and the risks we took, really mattered. And so the magic of the Pulitzer Center is that they've created a way for young journalists to go out and do what I did and do the reporting, in Bosnia that really changed my life, and it was sort of my coming of age and this, the highest, I think the most important journalism I'll ever do. And I'm so proud to be part of the Pulitzer Center. I'll talk more about the safety initiative during the Q&A, but I just want to thank everyone here. I want to thank the Pulitzer Prizes, this incredible institution, for what it's done, the Pulitzer Center for being so innovative, for creating a model that lets this kind of amazing journalism be done, and thank the Pulitzer family. It's just an extraordinary thing that I don't think any other industry, again, has an award that raises people's, game, that forces them to do the right thing, to literally expose injustice and make them get accolades for it that literally changes their lives. So thank you all.